What could have surprised us 50 or even 20 years ago? The idea of colonizing Mars, growing artificial organs, unmanned vehicles. Right now, we're going to share news that will shock even today's inhabitants of Earth. And just a few decades ago, it would have been taken as a quote from a science fiction novel. So most likely, we are living inside a black hole, and in this huge bubble, Dyson spheres, built by highly developed civilizations, are neighboring with us. How do you like that twist? Black holes are frightening, almost unexplored objects. Our knowledge about them resembles fragmented scraps from which we try to piece together a monumental canvas. Basically, everything that is known about black holes is the fact of their deadly danger. Mysterious dark funnels are extremely massive bodies that have literally collapsed into the fabric of space, bending it significantly. The second cosmic velocity, or escape velocity in the case of black holes, is higher than the speed at which light travels. That means even photons of light are unable to escape the event horizon, the imaginary line after crossing which there is no way back. But how did Earth end up in a black hole? If we assume that the theory is correct, as the physicists from the University of Rhode Island did, the absurdity of such a scenario immediately becomes apparent. Black holes are so massive that they can distort and deform enormous stars, gradually pulling them into their deadly embrace. Again, we must not forget about the process of spaghettification, which inevitably happens to objects consumed by the insatiable vortex. But if Earth were to survive even this ordeal, it would end up in the region of a hard singularity. Under such conditions, our planet would turn into a tiny object of extremely high density, on the surface of which life could not develop even theoretically. Therefore, the theory that Earth was once boarded by a black hole should not be taken into account. Common sense tells us to rule it out. Are there any alternative hypotheses? Yes, and one of them suggests that our planet originally formed inside the black monster. Get ready, we're about to challenge the very foundation of astrophysical concepts on which astronomy is based. The hypothesis was proposed by physicists from the aforementioned university. It goes as follows. The Big Bang is a detonated singularity of a black hole. That is, the funnel kept compressing until it exploded, creating the universe we live in now. But the problem is that the parent universe of this black hole must be of even more incredible size. After all, just like ours, it contains billions of such objects. Continued. The theory is called Schwarzschild cosmology, by analogy with the Schwarzschild radius of compression. According to it, any object can be compressed so much that it turns into a black hole. For example, for Earth, this radius is about the size of a matchbox. That means that universes, like nesting cups for children, can exist inside each other. So is it possible to get from one to another? That's unlikely. For the reason we discussed earlier, nothing in this world can leave a black hole, even if it's someone else's universe, except for Hawking radiation. But that's another story. Naturally, at our current stage of technological development, humanity is unable to prove this theory. But theoretically, the scenario is quite possible. At the very least, because our universe, just like a black hole, has an event horizon beyond which, even with modern telescopes like James Webb, we are unable to look. As an alternative to Schwarzschild cosmology, there is the bubble universe model. Its proponents believe that at some point, as a result of the chaotic separation of collapsing matter inside a black hole, our universe could have emerged. That is, it did not reach singularity, but instead began to expand from a peculiar protuberance that bounced back inside the cavity. Another piece of evidence that we live inside a black hole is the recently discovered rotation of galaxies in the early universe. This phenomenon was discovered by the James Webb Telescope. The galaxies in question appeared just 300 million years after the Big Bang, and it turned out that they are rotating in the same direction. This led scientists to examine the phenomenon more closely and publish a detailed study in the monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society. The astronomers didn't expect any major discoveries. Monitoring the universe with an innovative telescope was aimed at studying the process of galaxy formation and the growth of supermassive black holes. But during the observations, the scientific community encountered a number of surprises. One of them was the clearly visible rotation of galaxies, and all in the same direction. Previously, it was believed that there shouldn't be a clear direction that is the same for all star clusters. However, it turned out that 40% of the galaxies studied rotate counterclockwise, while 60% rotate clockwise. A total of about 270 galaxies were studied, which is enough to draw certain conclusions. Why does this phenomenon occur? One of the reasons is that our planet is located inside a black hole. However, such conclusions seriously undermine existing theories about the cosmos, revealing clear gaps in our knowledge. Another explanation for this phenomenon could be the Doppler effect. In that case, it would be necessary to recalibrate the measurement of distances in the universe to avoid further inaccuracies. In any case, the best scientific minds have been devoted to explaining the paradox. Research is ongoing. But what if the first option is correct? The surroundings of galaxies suggest that our home is a black hole. Are there any ways to indirectly determine the size of the global universe in which this funnel is located? Let's assume that the Earth is inside a cocoon the size of the solar system. By the way, a mathematician from the University of Massachusetts has already suggested this. So what was the result? If the statement were true, Earthlings would have surely noticed the oddities of such a limited space. For example, the rotation of a black hole would be observed visually, and effects of time and matter distortion would occur everywhere. You wouldn't even need to leave Earth for that. During a trip, say, from Berlin to London, passengers would regularly experience spaghettification. Such obvious effects are hard to miss. So what size should the cocoon enclosing the Earth be? Most likely it's exactly the size of our universe. It's frightening to imagine the scale of the parent conglomerate. Even more terrifying is how the black hole around us sounds. Subtitles by Dima Torzak. It's amazing how we live inside this hell and don't even realize it. Added. By the way, the theory that the Earth is located inside a black hole helps solve the problem of information disappearing into the funnel. This paradox has puzzled astrophysicists for many years. If the theory that our universe is located inside a black hole is correct, then it turns out that information doesn't disappear anywhere. It's just stored somewhere else. It's like transferring yottabytes of data from a flash drive to a hard drive. Actually, are there any drawbacks to these assumptions? Absolutely, and the first one is the lack of observable evidence. Perhaps you could suggest how to test the theory experimentally. Unfortunately, scientists have not been able to handle this yet due to the unimaginable scale of the field. Is it difficult to accept that we've been living in a black hole all along? It is for us. Especially if you imagine how many objects besides our humble planet are in this space. There are star systems, galaxy clusters, and anomalies with nebulae. Finally, the Great Attractor and the Hercules Corona Borealis Great Wall, which stretches up to 10 billion light years. But here's what's interesting. Could there be any artificial structures among these megastructures, for example, a Dyson sphere? Let's start with the basics. A Dyson sphere is an astroengineering structure created to harness energy or provide additional living space for colonists. Of course, at the moment, this is a hypothetical project, since the structure would have to be built around a star or a black hole. And it's not even about the fact that, according to the Kardashev scale, only a Type 2 civilization would be capable of constructing such a technological giant. We don't even reach the first type. There's another problem here. Which planet in the solar system stands out the most among its neighbors? Obviously, it's Saturn because of the rings encircling its impressive waste. Subtitles by Dima Torzak. You might ask, what does our gas giant have to do with Dyson spheres? The connection is direct. Previously, when studying Saturn, there were theories that the planet's ring was a solid, continuous object. But Christian Huygens, a Dutch mathematician and astronomer, was the first to suggest that the rings are made up of tiny particles. Otherwise, Saturn's gravity would simply tear them apart. Don't you see the connection between the Dyson sphere and Saturn's rings? Undoubtedly, such a megastructure would eventually face the same fate as a solid ring: inevitable destruction. There were options considered, like an extremely powerful engine that would constantly push the sphere or ring back into place, but those are just details. However, strictly speaking, the structure doesn't necessarily have to look like a sphere or a ring. It could be a swarm. Remember the movie Geostorm, but is there anything like that in our universe? It turns out candidates have already been discovered. In May 2024, a study called Project Hephaestus was published, in which scientists revealed some astonishing results. Physicists from Italy and Sweden studied data from 3 telescopes that analyzed about 5 million stars. Among the multitude of stars, astrophysicists discovered objects with excessive infrared emission, circuit signals. This is considered a sign of the presence of some kind of megastructure around a star or a group of stars. Notably, scientists from these countries worked independently, but the results of their research matched. This inspires even more trust in the information presented. So what did the astrophysicists discover? At a distance of 900 light-years from Earth, there are red dwarfs that should be much dimmer than the sun, but they shine 60 times brighter. Why? According to scientists, the excess infrared radiation comes from an unknown object that blocks about 15% of the star's light. It is a fairly hot megastructure with an estimated temperature of about plus 400 degrees Celsius. It might not be a sphere, but a Dyson swarm, which doesn't make the discovery any less significant. Couldn't such anomalies be caused by natural processes? Of course they could. A hot protoplanetary disk creates a similar effect, but there's a discrepancy here. The red dwarfs we're talking about are quite old, so it's unlikely that young planets are still actively forming around them. It could also be a natural phenomenon that we don't know about yet, or a galaxy that just happens to be in the line of sight by coincidence. At this point, hopes are pinned on the James Webb Telescope. It is the one that is expected to conduct additional spectroscopic studies in the future and determine exactly what is the source of the infrared radiation, whether it's an artificial or natural material, to prove or disprove the mentioned theories. Do you know what we are absolutely sure about? That despite predictions about the disappearance of many professions, just like lamplighters, cab drivers, elevator operators, and telephone operators have faded into history, astronomers will definitely remain on Earth. After all, they will have enough work for several centuries to come. While scientists are tuning radars to search for signals from distant Dyson spheres and trying to measure our black hole. We look forward to your comments, as we have much to discuss.